can't buy a beer when you're 18 years old? Why do you need to be able to buy an assault rifle?
You know, I think part of the conversation, we have to be unified. This country is not unified.
I want to go back to my original question. Why does an 18-year-old in Texas need to be able to buy an assault rifle?
The reality is this isn't a new topic. There's been a lot of legislation that's been out there.
You haven't answered my question, though. Why does an 18-year-old need an AR-15 in the state of Texas?
So this is how the legislative process works, is Congress determines the laws. Right now, we have a Congress that won't talk to one another. There's so much rhetoric and hate.
So start talking or answering Garrett Haig's important question. That question dodged 3 times by Uvalde's member of Congress. That was Tony Gonzalez there. Meanwhile, Minority Leader Mitch McConnell got the headline he was looking for. He said he encouraged Senator John Cornyn to discuss possible bipartisan action with Democrats. But NBC News points out this, quote, asked if the legislative solution that Republicans would welcome involves red flag laws, background checks, or mental health access. McConnell declined to offer any specifics. He only said that the goal is to come up with a proposal, if possible, that's crafted to meet this particular problem. Let's discuss. I want to bring in Lisa Falkenberg, editor of The Opinion for the Houston Chronicle, and Michael Steele, former chairman of the Republican National Committee and former lieutenant governor of Maryland. Michael, of the 3 of us, you know Mitch McConnell the best, so I turn to you. As I said, he got the headline he wanted. There are discussions on getting something done on a bipartisan basis. Do you buy that? Because that's talk on the same day that Senate Republicans blocked a domestic terrorism bill.
Yeah, no, I don't. It is a way of sort of deflecting some of the heat. So now the members have a talking point. We're working on bipartisan legislation. We're looking at ways to address this issue. It's taking that clip that you came into this segment with and just sort of exponentializing it. Just sort of giving it a better frame and a better deflection point. It's not. No one's putting anything serious on the table, even though there are serious substantive policy positions they can put on the table. McConnell could very easily have said, in answering the question, will it include background checks, red flag, or whatever? He could have easily said, it will include all of that. We're looking at all of that. But he didn't. And that was a tell to me.
So why are Democrats even wasting their time talking to him? Why not take something to a vote, show America on the floor, all of these Republicans that don't want to keep America safe? Why don't they just move on?
I think they should. And you actually are raising a very important point not to lose sight of, because guess what happens now that McConnell sort of made this move is that it freezes everything. So now Schumer's sitting there going, well, he's saying that Cornyn is going to talk to us about legislation. Oh, we're going on a break for 10 days for Memorial Day. And then, then the summer recess for 4th of July. And all the steps that Schumer could have taken to put legislation on the table that would have backed Republicans into a corner on these individual items doesn't happen because they're talking to Democrats about legislation. We've seen this movie 1,000 times. McConnell is acutely adept at playing this particular game this way. It still stuns me that Senate Democrats haven't figured this ish out by now.
He is going to run the clock and wait for us to get back and talk about gas prices and the price of eggs at the grocery store. You know who's not eating eggs? Those 19 children that were murdered 2 days ago. Lisa, your paper's editorial headline reads this: Abbott says never again after Uvalde school massacre. Don't fall for it, Texans. Why? What do you know that we don't?
That's right. Well, after Santa Fe, there were promises made. After El Paso, there were promises made. I remember after Santa Fe, the governor was actually open to red flag laws. He held a task force that got together. He invited a group, Texas Gun Sense, that does favor sensible gun reform. And the leader of that group was sitting right next to Abbott and said he seemed very engaged and he really understood the problems and he really wanted to address them. A year or so later, when the legislature really needed the governor's help and leadership, it was nowhere to be found. And the leader of the group, Ed Scruggs, said he backed away from everything that we thought he was going to do. So we've seen this before. I guess what I'm hoping, Texans are very angry right now, and so am I. So is my editorial board. But we can't despair. We have to cling to some kind of hope that when John Cornyn, for instance, says that he's not making a political point, that he really does care about these dead children, that there's something inside of him that actually does and actually wants to do something.
Whether he does or he doesn't,
I can't
Michael,
say the same about the governor.
Take us to Republican voters, because you know all sorts of them. And many are not gun enthusiasts. I think about a whole lot of rich Republicans that moved to Texas in the last few years because they like the low taxes. They're not into unlimited guns and no abortions. So why do so many Republicans just go for this?
Well, I think you have to really be clear about who you're talking about. You're absolutely right. There's a very distinct difference between, the Republican who's more concerned about other things than guns, and you just referenced them. But then you have a group that is very much honed in with the NRA, very much honed into the political infrastructure of the party that allows for cash and votes to flow. And that's how they leverage both of those at critical times. So you see, as we were just discussing, maneuvers that say, oh, we care and we're concerned. But that's the runway approach. The runway's a long one. So by the time you get to the end of the runway and you're ready for liftoff, you've burned all the fuel. The plane's not going anywhere. And so that, for a lot of those Republicans, that's been a very effective tactic. That really kind of runs the clock on a lot of the legislation. And so other Republicans that are in the party, that's not their thing. That's not what they fight over. They're looking at other narratives. And even within the NRA, which is very interesting, Stephanie, you're finding more and more NRA members who are just saying, I've had it, I'm done, between the corruption inside the institution as a whole and its response to these tragedies. It'll be interesting to see how that pressure builds inside that organization in a way that maybe changes some of that dynamics. But right now, to the point that was just made, there's not a lot of hope in that regard, which is why the citizens have to turn the tables here.
I don't know, Michael.
And that's at the ballot box.
I believe it when I see it. When I hear about people breaking away from the NRA or they want change. Okay, in theory, they say that. Yet an 18-year-old can walk into a gun store tomorrow and buy a semi-automatic weapon. When rules start to change, when safety becomes a priority, then I'll believe it. Lisa Falkenberg, Michael Steele, always good to see you. Thank you for joining.